Welcome everybody to this super Sunday evening show brought to us by Alchem. Alchem, thank you very much for bringing to us the legends of orthopedics. And thank you all for taking the time and joining us for this lovely session, which is so enriching. We've had a few so far, but today's is going to be really special. Let's find out who our legend for today is. It's a very exciting person, a person who's larger than life, if you may. Let's go ahead and find out.
They always say that you have to be a good human being to be a good doctor to be a good surgeon, and a good surgeon before you can be a great spine surgeon. And Shekhar is a perfect example for that.
He believes in simplicity and personifies humility. Bhojraj sir is my inspiration and has taught me many life lessons. Thank you, sir.
I know Shekhar Bhojraj from his student days, and in spite of the fact he has become an icon in the country, he is so humble and straightforward with the balanced view in spinal surgery, and he is doing a lot of charity work in villages.
Shekhar Bhojraj is one of the finest person I have met in my life. Straightforward, humble, very helpful, and a kind person.
Besides being a good spine surgeon, he is a very good teacher and he is down to earth and easily approachable to all of us and his patients.
And in just 10 years, in 2004 meet, he was presenting in Veterans Surgeons Forum.
He is a great, noble man, an unmatched personality. I wish him the best of the health. Thank you.
His unique approach to TB spine by insertion of sublaminar wire is famously described as "bend it like Bhojraj." VR Spine is a group spine practice which might be the future for us.
Sir has been a guiding light for us young surgeons in the ever-challenging field of spine surgery.
Simplicity, humility, self-discipline are the key qualities or the attributes which truly make him a great person and legend in himself. He's not only a very great spine surgeon, but a wonderful human being.
He is a perfect role model as a surgeon, as an academician, as a teacher, as a researcher, as an innovator, and he has given many out-of-the-box ideas to the field of spine surgery.
It is a great pleasure and privilege to have a living legend and icon in orthopedics, Dr. Shekhar Bhojraj, with us.
He is one of the renowned spine surgeons from India. He has a tremendous work and research in spinal deformities, spinal tumors and spinal tuberculosis.
Well, I would like to say that it's very difficult to find a good mentor, and it's very hard to part with one, and it's almost impossible to forget him.
Dr. Shekhar Bhojraj, my mentor. One thing if I want to say, form can be temporary, class is permanent. True legend, thank you.
He is not only an excellent teacher, academician, an excellent surgeon, but he has mentored and taught so many spine surgeons in the country today.
So I think it's amply clear for all of us that the toss has been won. We've had some glowing reviews of the man himself. So every few decades, a larger than life person walks the earth who makes a long lasting impact, not only on the people around him, but on life in general. His work becomes immortally etched in history, and he gets known as a legend, which the dictionary curiously defines as a story that's unreal and handed down over generations. Sounds pretty apt. The Beatles, Michael Jackson, Pele, Sachin Tendulkar, Roger Federer, they would all ring the same bell, the same feeling in you. They master their subject and soon they become the reference for that subject, the textbook for that subject. Their influence goes well beyond their specialty, you would agree. We all look upon them as role models for actions even outside of what they've made their mark in. They not only influence people around them, but they mentor generations. Their story, of course, is one of hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and skills that we can draw inspiration from. In life, we all need a hero. I hand over to Dr. Ram Chadda to introduce mine.
Thank you, Abhay. At the very outset, we are all very privileged to have with us a man whom many of us address in smaller circles as the big B of spine surgery. For me, the B is Buddha. Many of us call him Buddha as well. And we strongly believe he's a person who's found his ikigai, his purpose in life, because he continues to do what he loves. He continues to do what he's good at. He continues to do what the world needs. And he continues to do what the world can pay him for. This is a man who has been a role model to many, a mentor to even more, a peer to a few surviving like me, and has innumerable proteges who are so very proud to have him as their mentor or role model. This gentleman has moved up from being a survivor to reaching security, stability, and now success. But one thing which he kept doing was climbing the second mountain all the time. The second mountain of significance. How he did this, where he has reached, and what makes him truly a legend is something that each one of us would like to hear from him. So without stealing any of his thunder, may I have the privilege of asking you, Shekhar,
Hi.
How did it all begin? Can you tell us something about your early days as a doctor, as a surgeon, influences which were positive in nature, which may have made you what you are today?
Hi everyone, good evening. It's nice to be here amongst all of you. So let me start as Ram has asked me from the beginning. My parents came from a lower middle class family from interior Vidarbha. And my grandfather in those years was the first doctor as well as a lawyer. He was an MBBS from JJ as well as a BA as well as an LLB. And he had a huge practice way back in Amravati. But during the freedom struggle, he gave it all. And he was against the fight, the independence fight. And he was also imprisoned along with other freedom fighters. So that's where it all began. And I think the genetic coding of social work and sacrifice and determination started way back. So right from that time, at home, we have been hearing stories about my grandfather Azoba. And then came my dad and my mom. And my father came to Bombay with all these values and determination from a very poor background. And he made it big at the KM hospital. So at home, we used to hear stories about the freedom struggle, the sacrifice, the determination, and the true values. And my mother, as you can see here, also came from a lower middle class family. And they imprinted on us the non-materialistic value and the simplistic living value. So I think all that since childhood had a very major impact. Grandfather being a doctor, my father being a doctor, and my sister Shaila, who's also a doctor, that naturally brought me into the stream of medicine. And somehow I decided to do medicine and then subsequently do surgery, and then orthopedic surgery and now spine surgery. So as you can see here in the picture, that's my dad, my mother, and then I got married to Shilpa, who comes from an equally humble family. She came from a completely a Gandhian family. As you can see in the middle, so that's my family. In the middle, you can see Usha Ben, Usha Auntie, Usha Mehta, who, as you know, was a big Gandhian, and she dedicated her entire life to the freedom struggle. She was the director of Mani Bhavan, as you would know. And Shilpa's parents were both doctors, but with a strong Gandhian background. So now you know. Can I have a look at my family picture? And then we were blessed with 2 kids, Pooja and Tejas, as you can see here, and Shilpa. So both of us had those values when we got into medicine. So it was not something, so it was an inner calling right from the beginning. And that made it simple to get into this stream. Then of course, after being an orthopedic surgeon, and the main development began at the KM hospital and eventually at the Hinduja hospital. But 18 years from 75, where I joined as a medical student, till I left in 93. So 18 long years I spent in the campus of GS Medical and KM Hospital, which was a public hospital serving only the poor. So it was very much part of the same continuing philosophy of these values. At the KM Hospital in orthopedics, I was again very lucky to interact with 2 people who shared similar values. One was Professor Dheer. He was the only full-time unit, and I was his lecturer for a long time. And I learned a lot of things about simplicity, simple techniques, and how to not get carried away by the latest technology. Dr. Vinod Lahiri also was a close friend and still is, and I learned a lot from him, including the basics in spine surgery. And later on, he became the head of department, and we were very close, and his value systems also had a major impact on my thinking. Eventually, I went overseas for training because spine surgery was not a developed branch in India. And I was lucky to interact with all the stalwarts in spine surgery in UK, Europe, as well as the US. So all this had a very important background on me, an important impact. And eventually, as time went on, considering the influences early and present, I would like to enlist 3 or 4 more. One was Dr. Abhay and Rani from Search, where I am presently also a trustee of Search, as well as on the governing body. Then Dr. Poddar, who's the chief of that's Abhay and Rani Bang, as you can see. Padmashree now have enormous work, and I was greatly impressed. Me and my sister were greatly impressed by the work they were doing. So way back in 2003, I joined them, and now it's almost 15 years plus that we are working at Search. Dr. Poddar, a retired pediatrician, was the president and manager at the NGO in Bandra slums. So there I got a chance to understand the problems of the urban poor, which is an NGO, CSSC, Center for Study of Social Change. And then of course, I came across Dr. Boachi, who is from Ghana, an African who made it big in USA and devoted himself to social work in Africa. And also the writings of the life of Albert Schweitzer. Naram, my close friend, went to Baltimore at Hopkins and he brought me a book on the life of Albert Schweitzer. Although I knew about him, that book was an eye-opener in which I was impressed by the dedication of this great person who, although from a sophisticated European country, dedicated his entire life to the African subcontinent. And he didn't even go to collect his Nobel Prize because he was busy treating the ill. So all these things had a positive impact on the way I think, and finally, the main impact the continuing impact is from the SSFG group, or the Spine Foundation Fellowship group, which is a combination of all fellows. I'll talk about it a little later. So these are the positive influences and impacts which I have had in my career, which has brought me to this stage.
I think you can never, overemphasize the importance of these basics. And I think thank you for sharing with us something that we wouldn't have known otherwise. Moving on, as surgeons of the millennium, we've seen two finished products. We've seen a finished product in you, a very successful, high-end, international level spine surgeon, and we've seen a finished product in the specialty of spine surgery. And today we take both for granted, the specialty of spine surgery and the specialist, the spine surgeon. When you came to the field, neither was there. I mean, this is 35, 40 years ago, when there was no spine surgery in the world, if you may, certainly not in India. And you've been credited with bringing spine surgery as a subspecialty to our country. And you have been famously the first surgeon in India who exclusively practiced spine surgery. Now, of course, when you ventured into this new, uncharted territory, there must have been a lot of struggle, a lot of trials, a lot of travails. Are you able to tell us some things and some moments that described that struggle to develop this branch of spine surgery and you as a spine surgeon, sir?
When I got into orthopedics at the KM hospital, there was no spine surgery as a super specialty, but I developed interest. Although Professor Dhir used to do spine, Dr. Bavdekar was there in the other unit doing heroic anterior spine surgery. And somehow I got interested in this branch of spine surgery because I feel spine is a very important structure for stability, mobility, protection of neural elements, and it has a very unique place in the body. So I got interested, but realized there was no one where I could learn from because it was not a specialty. So also it was not a lucrative branch, that it was not a money-making branch because it was long surgeries. So it was a very difficult decision, but I was somehow convinced that I need to do this. So after initial learning at the KM hospital, I decided to take up fellowships overseas. And I spent 5 to 6 months in the UK, initially in early 80s. There was no email, nothing. I used to write handwritten letters to spine surgeons, which I knew from JBJS or from books. And after a month, I used to get some reply as to, yes, you could come and watch. And all that coordination landed up in my first overseas trip to UK, where I spent time in different parts of UK, London, Edinburgh, and other places, where I got trained in spine surgeries. And I came back, and it was not a lucrative branch. And although I got trained and there were some offers for me to settle there as a spine surgeon, I was still attached to KM and I was very keen to come back and start this as a specialty. So after learning taking these fellowships and learning the basics in spine surgery, I came back and I was lucky to be able to set up the first neurospinal unit at the KM hospital, which I think was one of the first ones in the country that time, dedicated in a public hospital. So in 1988, we started the first neurospine unit at the KM hospital. At that time, I had a lot of opposition and adversities and sometimes even ridicule. What this young orthopedic surgeon who's just got into orthopedics trying to develop such a complicated super specialty on his own. But I wasn't really bothered, and I stood by it and developed it as a specialty. So from 1988 till 1993, the unit really picked up, and we had wait lists of almost 20-25 patients at any given time of spine. So that's where we established spine as a specialty from 1987-88 till 1993, when I left KM. So after doing all these complex surgeries, because I was at the KM hospital doing working on patients with a very minimal salary, so to say, the need to get out into private practice to make money was never there, because I had that satisfaction of starting a new specialty. So when I got an opportunity to start the first ever spine clinic in the private setup at the PD Hinduja National Hospital, after I came back from the US doing a Kenton Leatherman fellowship from Louisville, the salary I got there as a startup was so much more than the KM hospital basic salary. So again, money was not an issue, but also because of the non-materialistic viewpoint, it did not deter me from continuing. So there was no pressure of getting into, the money-making lucrative spine practice. So I think it was the beginning of private practice. When I joined private practice, left KM, not because of anything else, but because I found there was a lot of waitlisted things and there was not enough facilities. I was not getting the OT slots and wanted to try out what the corporate world had to offer. And after a long waiting period of maybe 6 to 8 months where I had no patient even in the clinic, I didn't have a proper consulting room. Slowly it picked up, and then the first spine clinic at the PD Hinduja Hospital was established, I think in around 93, 94.
So again, it's interesting to see that you've scaled that, scaled that initial stormy period and got to where you were. And again, in any natural circumstance, if I've struggled so hard, I'm going to now reap the benefits of my struggle, and I'm going to play my second innings on top of the game, as you may. But there was a second calling, isn't it? And here I have a book with me called The Journey of the Spine Foundation. And if you open the first page of this book, it says that the journey started way back in 1988. And tell me now, after all the struggles, when you finally reached the zenith of what you finally reached your goal, how did this second inning begin when you were at the top of your game? It's understandable that people after retirement move into public sector and move into social work. But you uniquely did this when you were at the peak of your form, and you established the Spine Foundation, which is now, one big thing that's happening in our country. Can you tell us a bit about what thoughts went into this?
Because I had this background, as I mentioned in the beginning, of giving back to the society, and because managed to be at the KM hospital for 18 long years. As soon as I left and joined Hinduja full time, there was that sudden void in me, saying I was then treating patients who were affording, and I was suddenly getting, I somehow developed something like a withdrawal of treating these poor patients. I was wondering where these patients will go. And although I had left behind a good unit with Dr. Dandavate and other people doing the work, I was missing it. I was missing serving those people. And it took me some time to find out how that's going to be. On one side, I was trying to develop my private practice from 93, 94. But side by side, I was thinking of starting a parallel thing. I realized that if I wait for this till I am fully settled in practice, it won't happen, because I was young. I had to give my best to this social work, which I always wanted to do, which was my inner calling from day one. And hence, from 94, 95, I started investigating the possibility of starting a trust. And because of all the paperwork and charity commissioners hassles and because there was no such a precedent which I had to follow. There was nothing like that. So what I did was ultimately myself, my dad, my wife, all of us became the founder trustees and started this foundation way back. And it ultimately got registered in 98, which was like 22 years ago. Once that was set up, then I had suddenly an access to some fund which I collected by donations and by other people giving some, and basically initially putting our own and my own money to get treatment for these patients. So I started treating patients at the PD Hinduja hospital as a poor patient through this fund, because it was a private hospital. But eventually I realized that sitting at Hinduja hospital in a 5-star building, I am not going, these poor patients are going to find it very difficult to reach here. And that's when I thought of reaching out. And that's when I first went out and started exploring possibilities of using the Spine Foundation funding to really reach out to the poor. The first halt was at Gadchiroli, where Abhay and Rani impressed me. Gadchiroli, as you know, is a place right in the center of the country, and it's at the border of Maharashtra, Andhra and Madhya Pradesh. It's a Naxalite prone area, red alert zone. And I went there to meet the bungs, Abhay and Rani Bang, who are now Padmashree. And I was amazed by their dedication and work. Although being MPH and fully trained overseas, they had dedicated their entire life to this NGO. And initially I went there just to see what it was like and just to understand. But I realized, and when they realized I was an orthopedic and spine surgeon, they said, you will have lots to do here. And in 2003, that was the beginning of real use of the Spine Foundation for the rural poor. Because then we started doing clinics, and they said there's a huge need in this area. Although their main work was on mother and child health and infant mortality and their international work, they had a lot of data to suggest that the spine problems in the rural poor were major. So that's how we started doing the clinics. As you can see here, this is way back around 13, 14, 15 years ago. We used to take a sumo, we used to steal electricity from live wires and continue the clinics. Started keeping records. And we found there was a huge workload of patients. And that's when we realized, first 3-4 years, we only did the clinics. And we realized that 80% of these, we did this is the picture showing Dr. V.R. Joshi and his team. You can see Dr. Balkrishna and Raghu and all of us, where we did the first survey in rural India for spine problems, and we realized it was a huge problem. And suddenly we found that there was a great opportunity for us to use our Spine Foundation funding. So we started doing clinics, we started doing awareness, and we realized 80% of these problems. This is one of the Adivasi ladies who have no access to any healthcare. She had a cauda equina lesion and she was just lying paralyzed in the bed. So there was a huge scope to do so much. So slowly we started dedicating our weekends to go to Gadchiroli, and we started doing clinics. And after 3-4 years, we realized 80% of the problem could be treated conservatively. This is one of our recent clinics, of course. And 15% of the problems could be tackled with simple surgeries done in remote areas. And only 4 to 5% patients required to be done in high-end stuff. So this is one of our earlier camps, as you can see, where we started doing very basic surgery. As you know, anesthesia is a very important component. And Shilpa, my wife, was instrumental in setting up things there that time because there was no anesthetist there. And that's how we started the first surgery around 10 years ago at Gadchiroli with 1 case, 2 case, old machines. And that now has evolved. Just go back on that picture of the recent camp. Just go back, Abhay. Yeah. So this is one of our recent camps in Gadchiroli where we see almost 400, 500 dedicated spine patients. So out of that, we pick up around 30, 40 patients who need investigations and surgery. And out of that, approximately 20 need surgery in a given camp. The nearest MRI is 150 kilometers away in Chandrapur. So the Spine Foundation pays for their transportation, MRI. These are one of the health worker meetings. Just go back, yeah, where we have to teach the health workers to go out in the community and how to pick up these spine patients. What are the red flags? What are the filters? And that's how we pick up and then get them. The indicated patients are then brought to the Gadchiroli NGO hospital, which is a very basic hospital. It has a camp setup where they do hernia, hydrocele camp, general surgery camps, where we then started doing basic spine surgery around 10 years ago. And 15% of the patients required basic spine surgery like decompressions, cervical. So this is a recent picture where we have now developed the theater in a big way, got donations, and this is one of our recent camps. On one day we have 3 theaters now, and on one particular day we have done 17 cases with 3 theaters simultaneously running. And that's all because of the strong Spine Foundation Fellowship Group team, as you can see here. And you can see the visiting anesthetists, the workforce, and the entire spine team signed up. So we don't still have an intraoperative X-ray. Just go back and we don't have this high-end stuff. And these are how we dry our X-rays. But still, 15% patients are tackled. And this is Rani Bang, who herself got operated at the Surge Hospital in that local setup. And she had a spinal stenosis. She had a lot of comorbidities. We convinced her to come to Mumbai. She said, no, in case my population and my Adivasi patients are going to get operated, I'll also get operated. So she was operated around 5 years ago and she's doing fine. He is Dr. Abhay Bang, as you know. I would like to have a word about the 2 sons of Abhay and Rani Bang, Anand and Amrut. Anand is again a doctor and he's also an MPH from Hopkins, just like Abhay and Rani Bang. And he's doing great work. He's attached as a chief advisor to the Maharashtra government in health. He's also part of the Tata Trust group. And he's a main linkage between rural and urban settings and the health systems. He's part of us, part of the foundation and part of the activity. Amrut Bang on the other side is an engineer, a computer expert, and he has started what is called as a Nirman, which is youth sensitization program. And he is also studied in the US. He got the best student award in the US. His wife is a psychiatrist and who's also trained overseas, but they have both come back to Gadchiroli. And she's running the mental health program and de-addiction program in Gadchiroli. So it's a very vibrant, research-oriented, very high-end work which goes on in Gadchiroli. Now, after learning from this experience of Gadchiroli and the rural work, the Maharashtra government realized that this is a model which they could replicate. And hence, they requested us to start or replicate this model in Maharashtra. So we signed an MOU with the government of Maharashtra and we started 4 such projects, 4 medical colleges. First was Ambejogai, then we started in Dhuye, then we started in Akola, and then we started in Aurangabad. So we replicated the same model of going there, doing camps, picking up cases, and then eventually operating. Because they were medical colleges, there was an advantage because we had some sort of infrastructure. We also picked up 2 civil hospitals. One is Ratnagiri Civil Hospital, which was not a medical college. So the health department, the Ministry of Health, we signed a different MOU with them because it was not with the MUHS, not a medical college. And in Ratnagiri, we started the camps way back in 17, now almost 3 to 4 years. And now recently, we have started in Nandurbar, which is again a civil hospital. In addition to this, so basically these projects are 4. This is one of the meetings we are having with the primary health doctors, the rural hospital, district hospital doctors, sensitizing them to the program as to how to do it and how to pick up cases, how to refer to our spine clinic. So we have 4 types of centers right now. One is the NGO type with Gadchiroli. We also have one in Sitilingi, Tamil Nadu, which is a tribal health hospital. Then the second is the medical colleges. The 3, I told you 4. Then we have 2 civil hospitals. And then we have trust hospitals. One is in the interior of Himalayas. And we have a hospital called as the Hans Foundation, which is right in the center of the hills. And it takes 6 hours from Dehradun to reach that place, totally inaccessible. And it's a big challenge there. So we right now have all these centers everywhere. And what we are trying to do is to develop what is called as a 5-filter system, right from health workers, rural hospital doctors, primary health center, district hospital. And finally, the end point is the 5% which cannot be done there are brought to Mumbai. And here I would like to mention about the VN Desai Municipal Hospital. Because for the urban poor, we have a new setup at the VN Desai Municipal Hospital, since the last almost 11 years. So we have a big unit of the Spine Foundation running at the in Santa Cruz. It's a municipal hospital. So we have 2 units in Mumbai. One is for the adult at BN Desai since 11 years, and since 13 years at the Wadia Children, where Dr. Nene, initially I was there, and then eventually eventually Dr. Nene is taking charge of the pediatric urban poor. Mr. Dalal, Sunil Dalal, who is our main donor from Pentagon Trust, and you can see here the VN Desai Municipal Hospital, where these urban poor are treated completely free through the foundation funding. And here there is no compromise. We have all the latest equipment. You can see spinal cord monitoring, and there is no compromising in quality of care. And even all complex cases are done there. So all these cases are done at VN Desai Hospital. So all patients who are picked up from all these rural centers are brought here and treated. Rehabilitation is a very important part of spine in rural as well as urban center. And Dr. Gauresh Kenkre, who's a part of the foundation, you can see him at work at the VN Desai Hospital treating the urban poor. And here we get these complex cases. This patient is from North India, Banaras. This patient is from Uttaranchal. There is a patient right from interior Maharashtra. So these complex cases, there is one neglected patient from Ratnagiri who these patients cannot be done locally because they require high-end stuff, monitoring, good rehab. So they are brought free of charge to VN Desai. That's where we treat them. So Mr. Sunil Dalal has helped us in setting up the operation theatre, and we have state-of-art operation theatre at VN Desai now, with laminar flow and CM and everything. And soon we are getting a microscope.
Shekhar, sorry to interject.
Yeah.
How do you manage to sustain these goals and your efforts? You mentioned Mr. Dalal, but I'm sure that there are many other ways that you probably would be stretching your hands out to get help.
Yeah, initially it was where to spend the money, and now it is from where to get the funds, because we are so much everywhere. Like we have around 14 centers in rural India, and we have 2 centers for the urban poor in Mumbai itself. So funding is always a problem. So we raise it through philanthropists, the donors. And as I learned from Dr. Abhay and Rani, whenever you're doing good work, usually money is not a problem, money flows. And that's been our experience too. As soon as we started talking about and speaking about this good work, there were donors coming forth and helping. So to say, we have never stopped any project or given up an idea of starting a project for lack of funds, which has been a big thing. A few things about funding. Now, fortunately, we are having a lot of government schemes which are coming up, and we are trying to link the government schemes with these projects so that the funding part of foundation comes out. There are also CSR activities of corporates. So we are trying to use that by spreading the word. And nowadays, the new approach we are trying is to link the donor directly with projects rather than taking the money in the foundation and then spending. We work out the expense for a project, put it forward to a donor, and the donor directly purchases and funds that project. So basically, the Spine Foundation is only providing the expertise and the knowledge of reaching out. So that's going to be the thing. So eventually we will need funds, but we won't need, so even if the activity goes on, we won't need funds.
You are involved, Shekhar, with a lot of associations, like the Association of Spine Surgeons of India and the ARSI and Nirman. Could you sort of share how these connect with the donors and how do they help?
See, no work can be done being alone. So I think linking with like-minded association is the key. And I would like to mention 4 or 5 important organizations or associations where it is important. One is the ASSI, which is the Association of Spine Surgeons of India, where I happen to be a past president. And the Spine Foundation is presently heading the social wing. It has multiple wings, the research wing, the academic wing, other things. So the Spine Foundation heads the social wing. So they help us with funding. They help us. The ASSI members can be part of such projects. The second one is the RC, which is Association of Rural Surgeons of India, which helps us get into interact with rural surgeons, not necessarily orthopedic or spine, but general surgeons. So we share our problems. We share problems such as simple problems, such as blood bank problems, imaging problems. Then Nina Foundation is something I would like to talk about. It is a organization for spinal cord injury patients. And I'm one of the founder trustees. One of the main person is Ketna Mehta, who's a spinal cord injury patient herself. She is a doctorate, a PhD from Bajaj. And we work on getting a good care for the spinal cord injury patient. As you know, there is no good rehab center recognized anywhere. So we are trying to get the government and other people give us space and try to set up rehab centers. CSSC is one thing I would like to talk about. It is Center for Study of Social Change by Dr. Poddar, with whom I am working. That has given us an insight not into spine work, but into primary health of urban poor in the slums, because that gets us really to the grassroots level. And presently we are looking at COVID problems in that area. So that helps us to remain our feet fully grounded at the grassroots level. So I think these associations are extremely important. And search I've already spoken about. So I think these 5 organizations are extremely important.
So that's fantastic philosophy, sir, about how social medicine should work. I'd like to bring this discussion back on the ground and a place where we all are still. We have not still reached the level of social sensitization. We hope to follow you, but in our life, you've seen the specialty develop from scratch. And it's come to a place now which is at par with anywhere in the world. What is your take on this journey that our specialty has undergone? And on another front, are you cynical about technology being an enemy of a good surgical skill set, or do you think technology helps us? What are your views about group practice? You started off as a loner in a public hospital, but today you're a part of a successful group. Do you think that's the way forward? So your views about the journey of spine surgery as a specialty, group practice, as well as technology in spine surgery, sir?
See, here one basic thing is very important. The 18-15-5 rule. 80% of spine patients, if you really look at, require good rehab and conservative care. 15% require very basic surgery, even if you do it at grassroots level or in cities or in corporate hospitals. So that leaves us with around 5% of patients who need the technological know-how. Complex spinal deformities, complex tumors, reconstruction, CV junction anomalies, and combined neurosurgical work, where you cannot do without high-end anesthesia, high-end monitoring, O-arm, navigation, robotics. But fortunately, it's only 4 to 5%. So we have to be aware of that. So for us at the foundation, where we are trying to reach out, this is a very good thing, because if 80% required high technology, we would be totally paralyzed. We won't be able to do anything. So today, when we do 15% of simple surgeries in the periphery, we are actually treating 100% of patients, because we also managed to get that 4% back home and treat them. So you're doing like a total service. So this perspective, if you have, you get everything in the right perspective. So for that 5%, you cannot compromise. A small child with a complex deformity at Wadia, who cannot afford anything, still requires spinal cord monitoring, still requires top class anesthesia, still requires ICU, maybe still requires navigation, because you still need high-end things to put those screws in a deformed spine. So there's nothing taking away from technology, but you have to view it in a perspective. It doesn't mean you flow your whole practice into that, because then you're going to service only 5% of patients, and then you're struggling with marketing and trying to get that 5% who are being stretched and snatched by everyone. Coming to group practice, again, this is also based on the same principle, because after some time you realize, if you're going to serve this 80-15-5 equation, you may not be equipped to do justice to 80-15 as well as 5. So it is best to have a group of young and old, of conservative and aggressive surgeons, so that the entire spectrum of spine surgery is taken care of. Because you as a person cannot cannot learn everything. You cannot learn the OAM, navigation, and also go to the villages and do. Whereas if you have a group, like for example, we started off with the ABCD group, myself, Ram, Samir Dalvi and Abhay. Then we matured into an ABC group, me, Ram and M. And presently we are in what are called as a VR spine group, which are the 6 trustees of. Now each one has got a sphere. One person does tumors, one person does minimally invasive surgery. I am into the conservative and simple surgery. So each patient who comes gets the best from the group. So I think group practice is the need of the hour and everyone should look at it positively.
Dr. Bhojraj, you have been running an excellent fellowship program. And where do you put this fellowship program as a way of expanding, propagating, adding value to your work?
I think as you would realize, if you are going to go all over and do all this type of work, you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it with 2 people, neither with 5 people. You need a continuously increasing number of dedicated people. So we need people who are trained adequately to do the 80, 15 as well as the 5 work. So we have a very good fellowship program which runs over 24 months. It's called the Spine Foundation Fellowship Program, and their fellows are called SSFG, which is Spine Foundation Fellowship Group. So 8 months they do in the private hospital, 8 months they do high-end stuff in the private hospital, and last 8 months they do work with the urban poor in the where they are becoming independent and trying to do work on their own. And all along they are taken every weekend, every month to the rural projects. So at the end of 2 years, they are trained in 80, 15, 5 as well as the rural. They are sensitized to this thing. Maybe out of 100, 50 will be sensitized, 50 won't be, depending on where they go back to serve. But that's okay. Today we have a 50 plus strong SSFG group and we have 6 trustees and almost 20 of them signed up for all our projects. And mind you, they are not dedicated, they have their own private practice. One is in Ahmedabad, one is in Ranchi, one is in Nagpur, one is in Bangalore. But when we have the camps, they sign up, and other times they are doing their high-end stuff. So that's how the fellowship program works. And I have, unless we have this SFFG, the foundation, which is an ever increasing number, each year we have these fellows signing up.
So, I mean, this looks like an overwhelming achievement at a young age of 60, Dr. Bhojraj. It would take most people a lifetime and a half to achieve all this. But as an insider, I obviously know that there's another massive facet to your personality, and you've not spent all your life doing what you just told us. And, you know, the soft skills, the right side of your brain. What is the man behind this fantastic surgeon and this philanthropist? We want you to share with us, you know, the man, the skill sets behind this, you know, great spine surgeon. Can you tell us a bit about your extracurricular interests?
I believe a lot in time management because I somehow feel I have a lot of time in spite of doing all this. And I think there are 3 spheres which I like the most. One is on fitness, because I am a fitness freak, though I may not look like one. And I was, for my height, 86 kilos, which was like 26 kilos plus. Can you show that picture if you have?
Of course.
So I was like, 20 years ago, I was 86 kilos, which is like obscenely obese. And then I took a decision because I had so much to do and so much work to do. I said, I must be fit. I must be positive. At that time, I was too busy doing things where I didn't care for myself. And then soon I realized that I have so much to do. I need to be fit, both physically and then obviously mentally. So in around couple of years from 2000, I somehow switched to fitness, and that's now one of my passions. And I go on all these crazy diets, and I go on a lot of cardio work. And one of my passions is biking. And we with Abhay and the SSFG group and the biking group, we have different groups for biking and for other things. And thrice a week we do biking in Mumbai before the city wakes up. And once a year we go biking to Alibag, and once a year we do an international trip. These are some pictures from our last trip over the Danube in Europe. And so basically a good cardio workout and diet is something what I'm looking at in for fitness. And now in this lockdown, I'm terribly getting suffocated and not being able to do so. I'm compensating by doing some step climbing and some workout, but nothing like fresh air biking. I used to be a runner at one point, and but I had some foot injuries and I had to switch to biking. The next passion I have is art. And since my childhood, I have been sketching and drawing, but as a hobby. But recently, I have used it as a fundraising thing. So we had an exhibition recently. I'm very active on the Insta. We also released a book called as Art and Spine, and these are some of the pictures from that. And we had an exhibition. It's a different art. It's a mixture of photographs. It's some sketches, some pictures I had sketched 40 years ago, some recent ones done last week, and things like that. There is also some lockdown quarantine art, which I have done, trying to do 1 or 2 pictures every 2 days of this lockdown. So basically, I'm quite interested in arts, and I was a professional cartoonist for a magazine in my MBBS days. So it's interesting. It keeps me on the edge and trying to, it gives me a little relief from the work. Finally, I'm interested in music. I don't know much about it, but I like to listen. And although I'm learning the harmonium for last many years, I wouldn't like to reveal how many. I think it's 20+ years. I still don't know much, but I enjoy listening and trying to play some music and trying to do some Indian classical music. So I think these things keep me rebooted and refreshed to do the work I'm trying to do.
Shekhar, if you don't mind, I have certain cryptic questions which I'm expected to ask you, because that's the sort of a person I am. So don't mind that. I have a feeling that the economic growth of any enterprise or a state or even a large nation depends on people buying not what they need, but what they want, with the money that they do not have, but they hope to earn. This is what is the economics. Now to twist it towards spine surgery, you have been a part of this journey. Do you think spine surgery is growing on similar lines, where we are catering to the wants rather than the needs?
I completely agree with you. I think it's a very interesting question, and good you brought it up, because we have a lot of young orthopedic budding spine surgeons. So I think the patients, due to marketing and media and internet, as you rightly said, want a particular thing which may not be what they need. And it's for us to decide to give them what they need and not what they want. So I think we may slowly fall prey to that and change our indications and values just to hold on to that patient and to the financial benefits thereby. So I think which are again due to our wants more than our needs. So I think it's extremely important. That's why to have this sensitization about what your values and indications are, I think that's where your primary training is important. And we try to inculcate that in our fellowship program, so that when these fellows get out into private practice, their feet are firmly on the ground and their values are completely decided. Thanks for getting this question. I think it's extremely important.
Shekhar, I've always wondered, and I have been fortunate to meet a lot of successful people, and you are one of the most successful I've met. And many of you, including you, have said that there's an element of luck which is important to be successful. You talk about your talents, your skills, your attitude, everything, that's fine. But you also harp on luck. I have a different caveat. I agree with your luck part of it. That's your take. But how important is marketing in today's world? There is one type of marketing which is the absolute brash, in the face, aggressive marketing, hard sell. And the other is a very subtle marketing. What is your take on this?
See, if there was zero marketing, as it was in the earlier days when I started spine practice, eventually the good results and the good work slowly but surely flows out, and you get clear, safe, unmarketed spine practice. But now the things have changed, especially in the urban areas. And if you have people who are trying to market techniques which they are not even good at, or what the patients want, not need, then the others who are trying to stick to their values have to survive. And they can survive not by changing their indications, but trying to market in a very subtle way. So that's why this group practice we have, you'll see our social, the blogs and all that, not to attract their wants, but to market what we are good at. And this is like it's like a nuclear thing. Just because the other one has a nuclear power you're trying to have, there is no war, but just one person is building the nuclear weapon. So you're building, there's a escalation, huge, but nothing is happening. So I think that's a sad thing, which is true. I think just like in lockdown, we have realized so many things. Tomorrow, by some switch, if we can just shut off all marketing and rely only on good results, we'll have some real good results, and patients will realize what they need rather than what they want.
Right. And so it is famously said that the enemy of marketing is the truth. And as a spine surgeon, you know that you're playing with a very high risk element of surgery and things can go wrong. So counseling the patient preoperatively, if you're too direct and you tell them everything that can go wrong, he may get himself checked or operated by another surgeon. On the other hand, if you don't tell him enough, you're not doing justice because you may have a problem on hand. Now, how do you deal with this double-edged catch-22 situation of counseling preoperatively about the risks versus benefits of the surgery your patient is about to have?
I think I as well as the entire SSMG group has a reputation of really trying to convince the patient not to have surgery. It's a sort of a anti-marketing technique, and sometimes I'm criticized for that. Because especially high-risk surgeries like myelopathies and tumors, impending paraplegias, I like to share the responsibility with the patient. It's very important. The problem comes when you're scared of losing the patient. I think if you don't have that in mind and you really care to share the responsibility, this won't happen. So if you have the thing of not losing the patient, but giving the right thing, because it is counterproductive in case you don't tell the patient and the patient really has a problem, which is a distinct possibility, you'll have a big problem on hand. So don't fear about losing a patient. In the long run, you will be a winner. Just be fair and frank and share the responsibility with the patient. You know something, don't hide it from the patient. Let him decide. He will try to put the ball in your court, "Aap hi hamare Bhagwan hai," but no, you share it with him. And nowadays we do video consultation. So it's very clear. So don't fear losing a patient.
I think that's a very, very strong message out to the younger population, that it's rather that you put the cards down on the deck right at the beginning rather than then suffering consequences of your dishonesty, if you may. As a corollary to this, we also know that the same surgery done by the same surgeon on a similar patient has different results in different situations. Now, again, I borrowed Ram's cryptic license. I want to ask you very directly, do you believe in God? Do you believe in karma? Do you believe in luck? Or do you believe that there's a whole set of arbitrary events that are happening around us and we are just, part of it all?
I believe in everything and nothing. So I feel, talking about spine surgery and results and all this, I feel what is important that you do your best. At the end of the day, when you're out in the market to treat a patient, you've got some training behind you. And if you're confident that for that particular indication and for that patient, you're doing your best, you be confident and do it. If for some reason you feel there is someone else doing a better job than you for that indication, you should have the guts and clarity to hand over that patient to him or learn it yourself. Either one of the things. You cannot deny that patient that better treatment. But if you're not convinced, so this is very important. At the end of it all, once you're convinced you're the person for that, you're trained, and patient does decide to have surgery from you, after that the result is destiny, because you have done your best, but sometimes you've done a good job, but your destiny, patient's destiny, you may have a bad result, and that's what you explain to the patient anyway. So I think it's important. I firmly believe, in addition to all what you said, in something called as non-doership, which means that I do not feel happy if I get a good result because it somehow inflates your ego, and I try to remain from believing that I am responsible for good. Neither do I feel dejected by a bad result because I feel, so I think it's a leveler, and to keep it open, whatever happens, it's not you doing it. You do your best, but don't expect the result. I think that's very important in all this.
So Shekhar, you believe that basically you are an instrument of a much larger or a bigger force. You are not the doer. You are just letting go. You are the conduit through which it is all happening.
Doing my best, but
yes,
not claiming the credit for the result.
Correct. We've all realized as professionals that we end up as one role wonders. We are either good as surgeons, or we are good as friends, or we are good at home as a family man. How do you look at an all-round professional?
I feel the professional has three aspects. One is the professional career, one is the social aspect, and one is the relationships. Professional factor is a very interesting thing, because to serve a profession, you can continue learning a lot of new things. But at the end of it all, there is no end to it, because you've learned navigation, the robo is here. Now you want to learn robo. Something else is there. So I think you have to put a stop to your learning, at least major learning at some point. And how do you decide that? I think it decides on one or two things. One is what patient population you're going to treat, what is their need, not want, and what are the resources you're going to have to treat them. On that, you plan your training. If you're going to be in New York, in hospital for special surgery, you cannot do rehabilitation as a spine surgeon. You'll have to do the latest things. But if you're going to spend 80% of your time in Gadchiroli, you did not know the arm. There we don't even have an intraoperative C-arm. And the needs are different. So I think first you decide. So whenever my fellow asks me, what should I learn? I said, you decide where you're going to settle and what patient population you're going to treat. So that much about the professional. The second part of it is the social aspect. I think we all belong to a society, and we have to realize that we need to give back. And finally, the relationships. I think this is very important. I give a big chunk to the relationships. It can be with a man on the road, your servant at home, your fellows, your family, your friends. And each relationship is important. If a child of a fellow is sick, you can't expect him to work and finish an academic project. You have to be sensitive to that. That's where your relationship and your sensitivity comes. And that's what people appreciate. So I think relationship and nurturing them at all levels is very important to be an overall good person, professional, social, and this aspect.
Shekhar, that's brilliant. But despite all this, there are times when we fail. And I quote Samuel Beckett, who said, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." You've given us a very rosy picture of all that you've achieved. I'm sure the legend, Dr. Shekhar Y Bhojraj, may have also had failures, which he has used as stepping stones to success.
I'm extremely happy that you asked me this question. If I had not asked, I was going to talk about it. I think failures, I have given a choice on in multiple conferences, actually chosen my most unhappy patient as my topic. And I have a 1 hour talk on my unhappy patient. So I think failures teach you much more than the successes. A successful patient will get better, go away. You will think and he'll think that this is the routine. Nothing different happened and this had to happen. As soon as you get a failure, everyone starts thinking and you give extra care to that subject, patient. And you get involved and you learn so much from that. And you learn from that mistake and you are aware. And I think failures are very important. I even failed in my MS exam the first time. And it was because of some argument with an examiner. And I never failed in my life. It was a huge shock for the entire family. No one had failed in Bhojraj family. And it was a crisis. But I got out of it very strong. And looking back, that failure gave me a lot of inner strength. And it taught me how to deal with failures. It taught me a lot of lessons. And I think if you don't have failures in your journey, you're not capable of going far, because suddenly at some point, if you get a failure, you have no experience to deal with it. So I think failures are extremely important and you must take that as a huge learning experience and learn from it. I mean, you're not allowed to make the same mistake twice, which is a very important statement. You make it once, learn from it, and then move on. You can't keep on making the same mistake twice. So I love failures in more than one way. Thanks for getting that question.
Fantastic. I think again, once more, very, very good learning lessons, pearls of wisdom, and we all want to keep these lessons with us going forward. Thank you, Dr. Bhojraj. You've been wonderful in the last hour and a half. But I still want to ask you, because we all wonder, because you've reached the pinnacle of your, of your clinical success. You're now known as the God of Spine. You've reached a pinnacle of, internal good health. You're known as the Buddha. You've mentored, more number of spine surgeons across the globe than most other people have. You've achieved your personal targets. You've been your philanthropy targets have actually outdone what you actually had planned. And on the family front, on the social front, you're like ticking and doing all the right things. So, I mean, and you're just halfway through your adult life, I must say. So what's the future? I mean, when you're done and you've finished all your goals, how do you look at the next 20 years of your life, and where does life lead you forward from here onwards? What does Dr. Bhojraj do now?
So there are a lot of things that are still undone. There are 3 or 4 things I would like to mention, like their dream projects. One of them is at the Search, Gadchiroli, where we are trying to set up what is called as a center, the National Center for Comprehensive Spine and Musculoskeletal Care. See, we can't keep on going into the grassroots level. So we want to start a center where, based on our experience with rural and urban poor, we develop a program where people can come from Orissa, from Africa, learn how to do this, go back and start rather than. So we'll give the technical. So by training health workers, rehab persons, and the spine surgeons, we want to. So that's one thing we want to look at. The second thing I'm trying to look at is for the spinal cord injury patients. The Nina Foundation, I'm a founder trustee, and I'm hoping to start some rehab centers all over the country. We have some beautiful spine rehab centers, but they are one-off, like in the Ganga Hospital, Shekhar has a beautiful center. But these are like specific. If you want to develop a national program for taking care of these differently abled or the spinal cord injury patients. And finally, my most important thing is the Nirman program of Search. I am very much involved in it. I was also a student as well as a faculty. And I would encourage all of you to look at Nirman on the website at Search. It's a program for sensitization of today's youth to the real issues of the country. So between 18 years and 25, those are formative years. And as you know, the biggest strength of our country is the youth. At that time, if they are sensitized to what our country needs, doctors, engineers, architects, lawyers, they will be able to do a good job. So I think that's what I'm dreaming of, and there's lots to do.
Shekhar, it's something that we've learned from you, that we must respect time, and you've been on the dot, and we really appreciate that. And continuing with the cryptic license that you have given both Abhay and your other friends, I would like to say that you've taught us three very, very important aspects about you, and which are worth sharing. It is, Dr. Bhojraj, is he a man who's followed his passion for his goals? Is he a man who has been dispassionate about recognition? Or is he a man who's been compassionate of his fellow beings, his team, his family, his group, and his society? Well, I look at Dr. Shekhar Y Bhojraj as an ideal combination of passion for goals, dispassion for recognition, and compassion for all his fellow beings. Thank you, Shekhar. You are somebody whom we would like to always emulate, and we would love you to continue as the leader that you are. Have a healthy life. Abhay has given you 20 years more. I'm giving you 40 more, because we need much more of you. And we hope to be there with you. Whether it is A, B, C, D, it can go up to Z. But someday, I'm sure, you will realize all your dreams that you are searching for. So, thank you, Shekhar.
I would like to thank Ram as well as Abhay as well as Alchem, everyone, for making this possible and for making this very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Abhay. Thanks, Shekhar. And a small announcement before we call it off, that a similar Meet the Legend is going to happen 2 weeks hence. This happened on the threshold of lockdown 3 to 4. So the next one is going to happen on the 31st of May, Sunday, same time. The legend who's going to be here is going to be Dr. Nandu S. Lad, Professor Nand Kishore S. Lad. And the people who are going to be going for him, just the way Abhay and I have today, are going to be Dr. Sudhir Warrior and Dr. Harish Bende. So mark your time, lock your diaries. It may be the last day of the lockdown, but please be there for Dr. Nandu S. Lad, Dr. Harish Bende, and Dr. Sudhir Warrior. Thank you, Alchem. Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you, Abhay. Stay healthy, stay safe. God bless you.
Thank you.